The fluorescent lights of Memorial Hospital's East Wing hummed their lonely midnight song as Marcus Chen pushed his cleaning cart down the sterile corridor. His back ached. It always did after the first 6 hours of his shift, but he had 2 more to go before he could head home to check on his daughter. 7-year-old Emma would be fast asleep at his mother's apartment by now, her math homework hopefully completed, her inhaler within reach on the nightstand. Marcus allowed himself a small smile at the thought of her gap-toothed grin, the way she'd wrapped her small arms around his neck that morning and whispered, "You're the best dad in the whole world." Those 6 words made every double shift, every missed school play, every aching muscle worth it. He had just finished mopping the administration floor when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong in the antiseptic silence. A gasp, then a thud. Marcus abandoned his cart and rushed toward the executive conference room. The door stood slightly ajar, golden light spilling into the hallway. He pushed it open and his breath caught. A woman lay crumpled on the plush carpet, her designer suit rumpled. One hand clutched to her chest. Her face had gone gray, lips turning blue, eyes wide with terror as she struggled for air that wouldn't come. "Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?" Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, his janitor's training kicking in even as his heart hammered. He'd taken CPR classes when Emma was born. A single dad couldn't be too careful, but he'd never imagined he'd need them like this. The woman's eyes locked onto his, pleading. She tried to speak but only managed a strangled wheeze. Her fingers clawed at her throat in the universal sign of choking. Marcus didn't hesitate. He positioned himself behind her, pulled her against his chest, and delivered sharp upward thrusts beneath her rib cage. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. The woman's body was going limp in his arms. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but then he thought of Emma. What if this was someone's mother, someone's daughter? He tilted the woman's head back, pinched her nose, and pressed his lips to hers, delivering 2 rescue breaths. Her chest rose slightly. He returned to compressions, counting under his breath, then gave 2 more breaths. Time seemed to suspend, the world narrowing to just this moment, this life hanging in the balance. Suddenly the woman convulsed and gasped. A small object, a vitamin capsule, flew from her mouth and skittered across the carpet. She sucked in a ragged, beautiful breath, then another. Color flooded back into her face as she gulped air like someone who'd been underwater too long. Marcus sat back on his heels, trembling. "You're okay. You're going to be okay. I'll call for help." "No." Her voice was hoarse but commanding. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "No hospitals. No. I'm in a hospital, obviously." A weak laugh escaped her. "I just meant, don't make a scene, please." Now that the immediate crisis had passed, Marcus actually looked at the woman he'd just saved. Mid-40s, maybe. Sharp cheekbones, perfectly styled dark hair slightly mussed, and eyes that held the kind of intelligence that missed nothing. Even disheveled and gasping, she radiated an unmistakable aura of power. "I should at least get a doctor." "I am a doctor," she interrupted, pushing herself into a sitting position. "Dr. Victoria Ashford." "And you are?" "Marcus. Marcus Chen. I'm the night janitor for this wing." He helped her into one of the leather conference chairs. "What happened?" Victoria's laugh was bitter, multitasking gone wrong, trying to take vitamins while reviewing acquisition documents at midnight. Capsule went down wrong, panic set in, and... She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You saved my life. Anyone would have done the same. Would they?" Victoria studied him with those penetrating eyes. "I've been in this hospital for 3 hours. Tonight. Walked past at least 50 people. Not one asked if I needed anything, if I was okay, if I'd eaten. You're a janitor who probably gets paid a fraction of what any of them make, yet you're the one who ran toward danger." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what was right." "What's your daughter's name?" He blinked. "How did you—" Victoria pointed to the small photo laminated onto his ID badge. "She's beautiful. How old?" 7. "Emma. She's everything." Marcus surprised himself with the catch in his voice. "I had a daughter once." Victoria's expression shuddered, grief flashing across her features so quickly Marcus almost missed it. Grace. She'd be 23 now. Brain cancer took her when she was 12. She stood abruptly, smoothing her suit. That's why I bought this hospital, actually. Memorial was where Grace spent her last months. I wanted to make it better, save other children. Marcus felt his heart constrict. I'm so sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. But her eyes told a different story. Marcus, I want to do something for you. To thank you. That's not necessary. How much do you make annually? The question was so unexpected, so blunt, that Marcus stammered. That's 32,000, roughly. But I pick up extra shifts when I can, and my mom helps with Emma. 32,000. Victoria's jaw tightened. To clean up after people who make 10 times that and probably don't even acknowledge your existence. Do you have a college degree? Some credits toward business administration. Had to drop out when Emma's mom left us. Baby bills. You know how it goes. I do, actually. I put myself through medical school working as a hospital orderly. Different era, but the struggle doesn't change. Victoria pulled out her phone. I'm offering you a job, executive assistant to the hospital's director of operations. 55,000 to start, full benefits, tuition reimbursement if you want to finish your degree. You'll coordinate schedules, manage projects, interface between departments. The skills you need you already have: organization, reliability, care for others. The rest we can teach you. Marcus felt like the floor had dropped away. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about talent. You know this hospital inside and out. You notice things. You care enough to act. That's rarer than you'd think. Victoria extended her hand. I need people like you. People who run toward the emergency, not away from it. Why? Marcus whispered. Why would you do this for me? Victoria's eyes grew distant. When Grace was dying, there was a janitor at our old hospital, Mr. Rodriguez. He'd come into her room every night, tell her stories about his grandchildren, bring her little origami animals he'd folded. The nurses were overworked. The doctors were clinical. Everyone was so focused on her disease. But Mr. Rodriguez saw Grace. He made her laugh during her darkest hours. She blinked rapidly. I never got to thank him properly. He passed away 2 years after Grace did. So maybe this is me, paying forward what I should have paid back. Marcus thought of Emma. Of the nights he'd come home too exhausted to read her bedtime stories, of the field trips he'd missed, the birthday party he couldn't afford to throw. He thought of his mother, aging and arthritic, still babysitting because he couldn't afford better childcare. He thought of the weight that had sat on his chest for 7 years, the constant calculations of whether he could afford Emma's medication and the electric bill in the same week. I accept, he said, his voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. Thank you. Thank you so much. Victoria smiled. A real smile this time, one that reached her eyes. Don't thank me yet. This job will be hard work. But Marcus, you literally gave me my life back tonight. The least I can do is help you build a better one. 6 months later, Marcus stood in that same conference room, but everything had changed. He wore a crisp button-down shirt instead of janitor's scrubs. His nameplate read, Marcus Chen, operations assistant instead of maintenance staff. He'd just finished presenting a proposal to reduce patient wait times by 15% through better staff scheduling, a system he'd designed based on his years of observing the hospital's rhythms from the invisible position of night janitor. Victoria sat at the head of the table, flanked by department heads and board members. When Marcus finished, she led the applause. Brilliant work, she said. We'll implement it starting next month. As the room emptied, Victoria lingered. Emma's doing well in her new school? Thriving. She told me yesterday she wants to be a doctor when she grows up. Like you. Marcus shook his head, still amazed by how completely his life had transformed. I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. It's not a dream. It's what happens when kindness meets opportunity. Victoria walked to the window overlooking the city. You know what I've learned, Marcus? We walk past hundreds of people every day, and we have no idea who they really are or what they're capable of. We see janitors, baristas, cashiers. We see roles, not humans. But everyone has a story. Everyone has potential. Sometimes all they need is someone to see them. You saw me, Marcus said quietly. No. Victoria turned to face him. You saw me first. You saw a person choking and you acted. You reminded me why I bought this hospital in the first place. Not to build an empire, but to help people. I'd lost sight of that. Lost sight of Grace's memory in the business of healthcare. You brought me back. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I just gave you CPR. You gave me more than that. You gave me hope that there are still good people in the world. People who act selflessly. People who see beyond themselves. She smiled. Besides, you're an excellent operations assistant. I knew you would. 3 years after that midnight crisis, Marcus stood in a hospital chapel. Not as a janitor, not as an assistant, but as the newly appointed director of patient experience, a position Victoria had created specifically for him, after he'd earned his degree through the hospital's tuition program. Emma sat in the front row, now 10 years old, beaming with pride as her father was recognized for implementing programs that had made Memorial the highest-rated patient care facility in the state. Victoria approached the podium for her speech. When I bought this hospital, she began, I thought I knew what excellence looked like. Advanced technology, renowned specialists, state-of-the-art facilities. And yes, those things matter. But I learned something from a man who was mopping floors on a midnight shift. I learned that true excellence is measured in moments of humanity, in someone who runs toward a stranger in crisis, in seeing the person, not the position, in understanding that how we treat the invisible people around us says everything about our character. She looked directly at Marcus. This man saved my life with CPR and compassion. In return, I offered him a job. But the truth is, he's given me far more than I've given him. He's reminded everyone in this hospital, from our board to our janitorial staff, that we're all human beings first, that titles matter less than hearts, that the person who cleans the floors might have insights the person in the corner office desperately needs. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed, Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Dad? Mrs. Ashford told me she's funding a scholarship for kids like me whose parents work really hard. She said you inspired it. Marcus looked across the room to where Victoria stood talking with board members. She caught his eye and nodded. A silent acknowledgement of how far they'd both come from that terrifying night when he'd breathed life back into a stranger's lungs. Later, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed, in the modest but comfortable apartment his new salary afforded, she looked up at him with those serious eyes that reminded him so much of himself. Dad, you know how you always tell me to be kind to everyone, even if they seem different from us? Yeah, sweetheart, what about it? Mrs. Ashford told me you saved her life because you saw her as a person who needed help, not as a rich lady in a fancy suit. She said that's the most important lesson anyone can learn, to see people for who they are inside. Marcus kissed her forehead. Mrs. Ashford is a very wise woman. She said you're wise too. She said you gave her a gift by just being yourself. Emma yawned. I want to be like you when I grow up, Dad. Someone who helps people. As she drifted off to sleep, Marcus sat in the quiet darkness and thought about that night. How a simple act, doing what any decent person would do, had created ripples that changed everything. He'd gained financial stability, yes, a career with purpose, educational opportunities. But more than that, he'd gained proof that kindness wasn't weakness, that seeing the humanity in others, regardless of their status or position, created connections that could transform lives. Victoria had given him opportunity, but he'd given her something equally valuable, a reminder of why any of it mattered. In saving her life, he'd somehow helped save her soul from the isolation of wealth and power. And in offering him a chance, she'd proven that the world could still surprise you, that compassion could be returned tenfold, that a single moment could rewrite your entire story. Marcus thought of all the people he'd walked past in his life, all the invisible workers he'd once been invisible alongside. He made a silent promise to Emma, to himself, to Victoria's memory of Grace. He would never forget where he came from. He would use his position to elevate others, to see them, to create opportunities the way Victoria had for him. Because in the end, we're all just people. Some of us mop floors. Some of us run hospitals. Some of us are single parents barely scraping by. Some of us are billionaires choking alone in conference rooms at midnight. But underneath it all, we're all the same. Fragile, mortal, desperately hoping that when we fall, someone will be there to help us breathe again. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, that someone will be a janitor with a daughter's photo on his badge and enough love in his heart to see beyond the surface, to act without hesitation, to give everything without expecting anything in return. That's when everything changes, not in grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but in the quiet moment when one human being chooses to save another, and in doing so, saves them both.